What if I told you that one of the most important protest movements in the world right now is happening in a country many people only know from headlines? When people hear Iran protests, they often imagine chaos, anger, or unrest. But the real story is far deeper, more complex, and more human than most news clips show. The protests in Iran are not just about politics. They are about daily life, dignity, identity, and the future of an entire generation. Hello and welcome to Fun Facts to Know. In this video, we're breaking it down calmly and clearly. No shouting, no propaganda, just facts and context. Here are 10 important facts about the Iran protests that you need to understand. Fact 1. The protests did not start from one single event. One of the biggest misconceptions is that the Iran protests started because of just one incident. In reality, the protests are the result of years of accumulated pressure. Economic hardship, high inflation, unemployment, currency devaluation, social restrictions, political frustration, and lack of trust in institutions all piled up over time. When people reach a breaking point, it's rarely about one day or one event. It's about years of feeling unheard. The protests are best understood as a long-term social reaction, not a sudden explosion. Fact 2. Economic pressure is a major driver. Iran's economy has been under severe strain for years. Inflation has made basic necessities like food, rent, and transportation increasingly expensive. Many families struggle to afford everyday life, even if they have jobs. Young people, especially university graduates, face high unemployment or low-paying jobs that don't match their education. For many protesters, the issue isn't ideology, it's survival. When people feel that working harder no longer improves their future, frustration turns into public action. Fact 3. Young people are at the center of the protests. A striking feature of the Iran protests is how young the protesters are. Many participants are in their teens and 20s. This generation grew up connected to the global internet, social media, and global culture. They compare their lives to what they see elsewhere, not to copy it blindly, but to question why opportunities feel limited at home. This generational divide is crucial. Older systems are facing pressure from a younger population that wants more transparency, opportunity, and personal freedom. Fact 4. Women play a central role. Women are not just participants in the protests, they are symbols and leaders within the movement. Issues around women's rights, personal freedom, and social control have been powerful mobilizing factors. For many women, the protests represent a demand for autonomy, dignity, and respect in daily life, not just legal reforms on paper. The visibility of women in protests has drawn global attention, but inside Iran, it reflects long-standing debates about identity, culture, and rights. Fact 5. The protests are not limited to one city. Another important fact is that the protests are not confined to Tehran. Demonstrations and unrest have appeared in multiple cities, towns, and regions across the country. This geographic spread matters because it shows the movement is not limited to elites or one social class. Urban centers, smaller cities, and even some rural areas have all experienced unrest, though in different forms and intensities. That diversity makes the movement harder to simplify or dismiss. Fact 6. The government response has been firm. The Iranian government has responded to the protests with strong security measures. Authorities view large-scale protests as threats to national stability and sovereignty. This has led to arrests, internet restrictions, heavy policing, and crackdowns on demonstrations. From the government's perspective, maintaining order is essential. From protesters' perspectives, these actions deepen resentment and mistrust. This clash between security and public dissent is a defining feature of the protests. Fact 7. Internet restrictions play a huge role. One major difference between modern protests and older movements is the role of the internet. During periods of unrest, Iran has imposed internet slowdowns or restrictions. This affects social media, messaging apps, and access to global platforms. For protesters, the internet is how they organize, share information, and tell their stories. For authorities, controlling online spaces is a way to limit coordination and prevent misinformation. This digital battle has become just as important as what happens on the streets. Fact 8. The protests have attracted global attention. The Iran protests are not happening in isolation. International media, human rights organizations, foreign governments, and diaspora communities are closely watching events. Statements, sanctions, diplomatic pressure, and global campaigns have followed. However, international involvement is complicated. Some Iranians welcome global attention, while others worry about foreign interference or politicization of their struggle. This tension highlights how domestic movements can become global conversations. Fact 9. The protests are about more than politics. While politics is part of the story, many protesters describe their motivations as deeply personal. They talk about wanting a better future, feeling respected in society, having control over personal choices, being able to speak without fear. For many, the protests are less about changing leaders and more about changing daily life. That emotional layer is what sustains movements even when conditions become difficult. Fact 10. The outcome is still uncertain. Perhaps the most important fact of all is this. No one knows exactly how this will end. Some protest movements lead to reforms, some fade but leave long-term changes behind. Others reshape society slowly over years. What's clear is that the protests have already changed conversations inside Iran. People are talking more openly about economic justice, women's rights, governance, and the future of the country. Even when protests quiet down, their impact doesn't simply disappear. The Iran protests are complex, emotional, and deeply human. They are not just headlines or viral clips. They are the voices of millions of people navigating pressure, hope, fear, and resilience. Understanding these protests means listening carefully, avoiding oversimplification, and recognizing